I better shut my phone off just in case it rings.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Linda Armstrong and Rita Giganti. Today is Friday, April the 24th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time. And wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we have a bit of a treat in store for you today. Rita has a book that she's going to be sharing with us that I had never heard of. Linda, I don't think you'd ever heard of. And this book's been around for like 70 years, 80 years, something like that. I mean,
Yeah,
it's been around for a long time.
long
This is
time.
almost as old as Think and Grow Rich, but I'd never heard of it. And it's
Yes.
interesting. It's called Working with the Law 11 Truth Principles for Successful Living by Raymond Holliwell. How did you run across this one?
Okay, so um, I have my own, like connection that I have with spirit, and I used to work with a mentor of mine who doesn't really work anymore. She's retired, and
Uh,
I was asking her opinion about everything that's going on, and like that I'm trying to help others be more positive in their daily life, so that they can move through this, where we are right now with more peace. And I asked her opinion on it, and she so I get this message from spirit from her, and I'll read it to you because it's interesting.
okay.
um let's see here. Okay. From spirit: it's not important that you know the whys and the wherefores of this current situation. As a human with a spiritual plan, you need to use it as an opportunity for growth, not fear. So go to the book Working with the Law by Raymond Holliwell. Familiarize yourself with it again and make it a working textbook so that the positive energies can be free to work. It is essential for your well being and the well being of those around you. And so I felt very compelled to share it, um, because I think all of us can use anything to help us through this scary time, or what appears to be a very fearful time. If you listen to the news and you or the radio or any of the shows that have the virus connected to it, there's so much fear, so
Oh,
much
no doubt.
anxiety around it. And listen, we're all human. I've been there myself. Like, my sister will get on the phone with me, she'll start spewing shit, right? And then all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, I was in my center, what happened?
Right,
you know
right.
I start thinking all negative things, and so I asked and I received, which is part of what we're going to talk about today. The book goes into the laws, and how to utilize the laws to your benefit, and how the book shows you a lot. And I've only, because I only got it the other day, I've only been through a few chapters of it, but what it shows you is that you there is no lack of control here. Like, you control your destiny. You are co-creating with God in every moment, and you have to do the work to co-create. It's not like, so it's not a passive thing. Even praying is not a passive thing. So when we pray, we ask, right?
Hmm.
But if we're not aligned with that, we cannot receive it, even though we asked. We have to
Hmm.
be aligned with it, right? So
Sure.
that's what this, what the premise of the book talks about: the laws. And there's 11 of them, and there are many, many people and authors who have said there are many different laws, like 15, 16 laws, 12 laws, whatever.
Right.
This man came up with 11,
Hmm.
and he felt it was the way someone should live their life authentically. I think it was worth, old or new, makes no difference, because part of what he's talking about, we've heard in the law of attraction, the law, the law of one, the whole premise of that. We've seen that in many books, many times over. But sometimes when you hear something different, sometimes the same material, but a little bit differently, like Linda was saying, people can get it. Maybe
Yeah.
they didn't get it the first 20 times, but we're going to talk about it today, and maybe they'll get it today.
Yeah, in fact, I think I'll interject and I'll read out, I wrote them down, the 11 laws that he has in his book. And yes, there are people who say there's 7, there's 11, there's this, there's that. There's lots of them. But I really like, well, let me read them first.
Okay.
And these are the chapters in order. So there's the law of thinking, the law of supply, the law of attraction, the law of receiving, the law of increase, the law of compensation, the law of resistance, law of givenness, law of sacrifice, law of obedience, law of success. So there's a lot of laws here that I haven't come across with these other people, with the list that you get from other people.
Right.
And my first takeaway, and I was texting with Rita as I was like reading it on my Kindle, was in the very beginning, he talks about, let's just take the word law, anywhere it says law, and change that to the word God.
Right. Or
And
love.
for me, like these little light bulbs went off. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. If something felt so much different, like energy shifted just around thinking about, as you're reading this, putting the word God in instead of the word law. And, you know, truly, premise of the whole entire thing is what we already kind of know, but maybe you can hear it in a different way, that we are all one. We are all that God quality because we are all creators.
Right.
And here it's a matter of, well, what do you choose to focus on? Like in the first chapter, and I'll get back to Rita.
Yeah.
And I don't know,
No.
Walt, if you had a
Please.
chance to read it yet. But in this law of thinking part, you know, it just goes to validate once again how, you know, there's law of polarity, right? So you have good and bad, right and wrong, you know, white and black, you know, dark and light. But the point of a big point that I took from this law of thinking thing is that which energy do you want to feed, right? So do you want to go into fear? Or do you want to go into love?
Right.
We, as the creator, have the ability to just flip. Like I call it flipping a switch. You can flip the switch to another energy just by choosing to do it.
Right.
And if you don't think you can, there's things you can do, like to increase your vibration so you can get there. But let me just I wrote a note on this one thing. He said, you cannot feed opposite energies. You can only feed one at a time. Which energy do you want to feed? Don't get stuck in feeding both at different times, because that's just limbo. And I don't know if these were his words or what, this is what I got out of it. The one that you feed the most will eventually be the one that comes into your reality, because everything's created from thought. And he really does a good job of making that point, that everything is created from thought. So when some people don't get thoughts become things, maybe the way this book puts it just gives you like another angle on it, even if you've heard it before. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I feel I have a more full understanding of this whole thing.
Right. You know, I think a lot of us aren't necessarily sure on how our thoughts can actually be reality, because we have millions of thoughts a day, right? So we think, well, how can I concentrate every single thought on something good when I have all these thoughts? Well, it becomes somewhat of a training that you have to, you know, help yourself with. This isn't something that happens overnight. And, you know, you need to train the mind just like anything else, right? Just like you trained it this way, we need to shift it and train it a different way. I also think that from what he's saying with this law of thinking, I always say that your emotion behind your thoughts are very important, because if you're having a lower vibrational emotion, which is envy, fear, jealousy, all of that, and you put that into a thought, well, it's going to create something completely different than what you would want, right?
Right.
So if you take this thought and you want to create, let's say, abundance and let's say prosperity, well, then in your mind, you need to see what that looks like. What does that look like to you? And then you need to have the feeling behind that, right? The feeling of joy, because you need to, like we're streaming live here, right? We're doing it live. You need to stream live in your mind how you perceive what prosperity looks like, abundance looks like, health looks like. Do a little video in your mind. But with that, Feel the emotion that comes with that. Like that brings peace to you. That brings happiness. That brings joy. That brings so many things. And that will feed the thought even more.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It also makes me want to raise a question, and it's a question that I always like to kind of virtually ask any author that I read for the first time about this particular piece, the piece of imagining and focusing in your mind on this new thing that you want. Because very often we have a lot of patterns built up, a lot of experience with the stuff that we don't want. That's how we end up with all the stuff that we don't want. Very often we don't have a whole lot of experience with the stuff we do want. So for instance, maybe somebody's trying to attract a bunch of money. Maybe they're trying to become a millionaire. They've never been a millionaire. They don't know what it feels like to be a millionaire. So the question I always like to ask the guru or whatever you want to call them is, so, how do you visualize being a millionaire if you've never been a millionaire before? And I'm curious to know what his answer might have been if he addressed that. I don't know if he addressed that. Oh, Linda's raising her hand. Go for it.
Go, Linda.
You find the essence of what it will bring to you. Right. So what does being a millionaire mean to you? What does it give to you in your life? If it's like peace or security or opportunity to do more exciting things, like what is the energy around that? So you find that energy within your body, right? So say it's a feeling of freedom, like stress-free. Even if you don't know what that feels like, you can imagine what you think that feels like, and and I like feeling. To find it in your body, and so you can connect to it and you can call it up. So then when you're doing these, thinking about it, call up the energy of what you feel this will give to you.
Right.
And I just wanted to add, because this is something Walt's been working on a lot, is a lot of the stuff as I'm reading just reminds me so much of Neville and so much of other people, but even more so with Neville, because he's always with the visualization, right? And the feeling essence of it. So Neville Goddard said that,
Yeah, I love the essence. I love the way you put it like that. The higher vibratory emotions that you can connect to it, or essence that you can connect to it, the faster it will come into your world, we'll say. Now, there are many people who are rich money-wise, but poor in other ways, right? And vice versa.
Sure.
Okay. So that's why we can never judge another person, because we don't know their life unless we walked in their shoes. So when someone says to me, well, I need more money in my life, money is just what? It's just paper, energy. Right? It's energy, right? So money is not, my mother used to always, say to me, money is the root of all evil. And I used to say to her, no, money is not the root of all evil. It's the intention behind it, or the love of it so much that you can't see past anything else. I said, if you use it the way it should be used, it's a give and take like anything else. It'll come in like a flow and go out, come in, go out kind of thing, right? You'll always have enough because there's an endless supply of everything on the earth, an endless supply. And that's what people don't realize. They think, and this is based on several things. This is based on what they see, when they watch the news. This is based on how they grew up in a household that might have seen money. In my house, my mother said that money was root of all evil. My father earned money in a way that was not the greatest, energetically, but he was never afraid that he wouldn't have money. So he always had it. And for him, money wasn't so much a physical thing to buy things with. It was more about power. So you see, he connected power to money.
Right.
And again, it's how you view it and see it. You will be able to bring anything to you, but you better be careful what you're wishing for. Make sure you have clear intention about it so that when you bring it to you, it's good.
Sure.
Okay.
So I'm curious. What my question was mainly aimed at, how does Mr. Holliwell express this? Does he actually address this issue, or is this not an issue that he goes into at all?
I haven't gotten that far yet with it. So unless you did, Linda, I haven't. Right now, they're just describing the laws.
You mean specifically about money, or about this thing of holding the energy?
About visualizing something you haven't visualized before.
Yeah. Okay. So before I go into that, because he gives a story, an example, because
He
gives
does,
examples
yes.
in the book.
Yes.
And I'll give you that one example that I wrote down yesterday. But I wanted to just say, like, something about the way, and I teach this stuff, but when you hear it, and sometimes you just get it differently, right?
Right.
So this thing about how we are all God, and God's a creator, we always talk about that. But something clicked with me in reading even just the first 2 chapters of this, or 3, I don't remember how many I read, where it makes you understand that I am limitless and I can create whatever I want because I am an aspect of God. So why, why are we choosing to live in all of this? I can't do it, when we absolutely can do it. And there is abundance everywhere if we would just allow it. So that's why I get really pissed off at all the fear in the media, because, and that's purposely done to keep us down, right? Because
right.
if we didn't live from that fear, imagine what this world would be like, how easy we would be creating. And that's what we're moving into, right?
Right.
And this is like the big zit that pops, and maybe people realize, I'm not going to live in fear anymore. And I'm not going to listen to these people who are not me and don't know my world to try to push all that fear on me. Because if you look around and not listen to mainstream media, you'll find a lot of sources that will say that this particular virus, although it's fast moving and it's causing a lot of destruction, the percentage of people who will actually die from this is like a fraction of 1%. It is so small. It's smaller than the flu virus, which we live with all the time. But we've been forced into our homes and being fed all this fear, and people are freaking out and going crazy because they're buying the fear. So our job is, and what Rita and I are really focusing on is, you too, Walt, how do we get them away from the fear and back into their own truth, so they listen here first and not out there.
Right. So, and we're not, by no means are we telling people, hey, you run to the store and don't wear a mask or gloves because you don't need to fear anything. No, we need to, let's think we have to make sure that we protect ourselves too, because I don't think we know everything, and I don't think we're gonna know everything. We're gonna know just exactly what they want us to know, right?
Yeah.
But instinct will tell you, I'm safe. I can go out with my mask and my gloves and I'll be safe. Or, today doesn't feel like a good day. There are days where I'm in the car and I turn around and my instinct says to me, my God self says to me, no good to be on the road today. Something's not right. Doesn't feel good. Go back home and stay in the house today. I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. And that's really what we're talking about, listening to your higher self, right? So he gives great examples in the book. You're right. He does give great examples in the book. And one of them was about the woman who, she had all this money, right? But she was unhappy because she didn't have a life for herself. Her husband had his life. The kids had their lives. She didn't have a life for herself, right? Yeah. So she was miserable with all that she had. Mm-hmm. So she had to figure out her purpose. Okay. Go ahead.
Is that the one who would say that would put down money or say, I'm going to be all alone? Whatever she was saying actually came true. And she lost.
That was another one.
Okay. Because there were two examples that were similar like that.
Yeah. That was another one, which.
Because you get what you say. Right.
That's right.
Another wealthy woman was saying how she would have nothing, thinking she would have nothing. Eventually she had like nothing.
She had nothing. She lived in a box,
Yeah.
Do you have that story handy? I mean, we love stories here. So I'm just curious if you have a story handy to read to us.
Well, Rita finds that, because I think it's maybe in that the first one, because it's a thought one, I think, the first chapter. But there's one where he talks about some fraternity people pledging for a fraternity, and what they would do as part of the hazing is they're going to brand you with the letters of the fraternity, and they blindfold you, right? And they do this whole process, or this whole
it's like a hazing.
Yeah. And so they don't actually braise you. They do something with a candle with a little bit of heat. Like it never touches you. I forget the details of it. This is why I'm really bad at giving details. But the gist of the whole story is they go back to the room afterwards, and the guy who is the one being branded, which the other guy could see they didn't actually really brand him. He had the letters appear on his body. He had welts of these letters for 2 or 3 days because
Right.
he believed that they were actually branding him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't
That's,
happen, but he believed they branded him.
yeah, I'm looking for the thing that we're talking about, but
The power of the human mind is really just quite
Yeah.
incredible. It truly is.
and absolutely. But there was one piece that I read that when he said, you know how people say seeing is believing, they have to see it first, they need to use their 5 senses.
Mhm.
And he says, no, it's the opposite. You have to
Believing, see?
believe and then you will see.
Yeah.
You know, so whatever it is that you're trying to connect to manifest, you got to believe you're going to receive it before you can see it. You know, I thought that, see, to me, I've never heard it that way before.
Oh,
Never
okay.
heard it in that sense before. So just the way he put it got me thinking right away. It's that whole belief and the fact that you deserve it, which again, you know, goes back to how were you raised? You know, do you have these subconscious limitations in the subconscious mind saying, I don't deserve that. Who am I to say I should be a millionaire? Or if you're, you know, if you're, because I can speak to this because I was, even though I don't practice it now, I was raised Catholic. You know, we were taught to about money, like, oh no, you gotta, you know, you gotta continually give. You shouldn't have too much money because that's evil. You know, these are concepts that if you're raised in a house like that, now you have to deconstruct that and reconstruct something else for yourself because it's in the subconscious. It stays there, and we operate on the subconscious 99% of the time.
Yeah.
So we're operating on things that we may not believe in now, but they're there, and we have to go back and shift that, change it.
And the implanting starts at the very early young ages. I mean, like the first 7 or 8 years, we're like little sponges. We take it all in. We're looking to see how the world operates.
I'm telling you, right from conception.
Yeah.
Whatever the parents are saying while you're in the womb, everything. You remember and absorb it all, and you're affected by that.
So I found one story. I didn't find the one we were looking for.
Okay, go ahead.
I like the way he also talks about, you know, planting seeds and weeds and all that, right?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he talks about, I'll just read it from here. The mind force is creating continually like fertile soil. Nature does not differentiate between the seed of a weed and that of a flower. She produces and causes both seeds to grow. The same energy is used for both. So it is with the mind, and so it is with the mind. The mind creates either good or bad. Your ideas determine which is to be created. A farmer who lived in Nebraska and had come from a small farm in Pennsylvania years before never could adjust himself to using the binder. I guess it's a piece of equipment, a machine that cut and bound grain. He had been accustomed to the old handle cradle and tied his grain by hand. Repeatedly, he said to his friend, "That binder will get me yet."
Oh, dear.
He was afraid every time he climbed upon its seat. And one day while I was there, this is him talking, horses ran away from him and he was thrown over the reel into the machine. Like Job, his fear came upon him. It took just a few years to bring into reality the fears that he subconsciously had entertained and accepted.
Yeah. See, so that's,
reminder.
you know, it's law of attraction is all around us. It's what we need to ask ourselves, what we want to attract, right? I did find the other story of the woman, if you want me to tell
let's hear it. Sure.
Yeah.
So the man who's speaking, you know, with the book says, I knew a woman who once lived in a beautiful home in an exclusive suburban district with every comfort that wealth could supply to make her happy. The home was a large rambling house facing a beautiful lake with green terraces sloping to its edge. Flower gardens, perfectly kept, were scattered freely along each path throughout the estate. She had many servants to help her, and from observation, her life was just about as complete as one might dream about. Well, with all this wealth and beauty, the woman was heard to remark to her friends that she hoped that one day she would come, I'm sorry, that she hoped the day would come when she would be relieved of the big house and all its problems and could live in a trunk.
Oh,
She
no.
wanted a room to herself. Yeah, she wanted a room to herself for herself and just large enough to move about without any extra space to dust and to keep clean. Now, she didn't even have to clean her home, right? A few years later, her husband died and left the estate to her. She sold the home at a sacrifice. Her other holdings depreciated so much in value through unwise investments and transfers that she had but a small income left. She went to live with her sister, and true to her wish, she now has a small room on the third floor and practically lives in a trunk. Whether she is happier now than before, I don't know, but I doubt it. One thing I do know, that is, she gradually led herself to the small room and privations when her consciousness began to grow small and limited. She unconsciously touched the creative principle and supplied it with ideas of smallness and privacy and limitation, which materialized within a few years' time.
I love the
So,
story. I love
right?
it, and I love it in part because, I mean, we've talked about this before on all the days of the podcast. It's quite possible that she was happy with that. I mean, it's not
Very
what I would have
much.
picked. It's not what you picked, perhaps, but she
Very
apparently
much.
would have been very happy with it because she did indicate it originally that she would like it.
Yeah,
So once
and
she
we're
got
not
there,
we're not, we're not here to say if she was happy or she
right,
wasn't. We're only here to show that what she put out there, she got back.
she got back. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, Linda, anything else you want to add to the law of thinking?
Well, I'm just looking at my notes and I don't remember what I was reading when I wrote them. But getting back to the weed thing, I quoted something he said, which was, fear is like weeds in your garden. If you don't clear them, they overtake the whole garden. I mean, how more simple can it be said than that, right? And that's, you can see that in nature. That I know my garden right now is overrun with weeds. I have to get out there and do some work,
Exactly.
I have to do the work. I have to put the energy into making that garden look the way I want it to look. It's not just going to happen by, So it's almost like no energy. Even it's just making me think. If you give something no energy, it can go the wrong way as well too, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just doing its own thing. You have no control. It's like you pulled yourself out of the picture. And then weeds, what are the weeds going to do? They're just going to keep multiplying.
I love the choice that he made to call it weeds too, because by definition for a gardener, a weed is the plant that the gardener doesn't want. Mm-hmm. So it's literally, what does the gardener want? The gardener wants these plants, but he or she does not want the weeds. That's what a weed is. A weed is the thing that you don't want.
We have to pull out the weeds.
Yeah. And one person's weed can be another person's wildflower. I mean, it's going to be different from one person to the next,
Of course.
But the point is, the weed is something you just don't want. Okay, well, that makes it pretty clear.
Yeah. Interesting.
I actually like weeds. Like in my backyard, I love the dandelions, these little purple things that come up. I just let it be how it is. But my flower beds, I want to look a little different.
Sure.
Anyway, another thing I wrote, and it's probably was his words, but I don't know if it was his or mine because I don't remember now when I did it. But it says, I wrote, people tend to believe in what they can see, right? It's his words. This is what he's making a point. And everybody knows that, right? People, it's like, when I see it, I'll believe it. Like they can only believe what their eyes will show them what they see. But if God is the source and we are God, then believing this will always bring you your desire, right? Mm-hmm. So if I am that energy and I believe I am that energy and I can be that energy, I can just create because I'm coming from that energy of love always.
Right.
And then I just wrote, what comes first, seeing or believing? So that's the question he asked. What comes first, seeing or believing? It has to be believing before you can actually see it. And you go through history. Right. Yeah. And I think he even maybe talked about, I don't know if he talked about Einstein or he talked about electricity or something. People didn't believe it, but there were visionaries, right, who knew that they could create this stuff. Then you can put it through your walls and you can have things function on electricity.
Yeah. It's
but
all
he had
about
to believe it before he could see it.
Right. It's all about supply and demand, right?
Yeah, we didn't get to that one yet, but
we didn't get to
no, maybe
but that's where that is.
Oh, it is. I wrote that. I read that already. Yeah. So I read the first two. It was love thinking, law of supply. So that's where that came from, second chapter. Yeah.
So I just want to tell people this. you're going to think all the time. There's no stopping your thinking process. Okay. So they liken your thoughts to the speed of light, right?
Yes.
So
Yes.
it says here, scientist tells us that thought is compared with the speed of light. Our thoughts travel at a rate of 186,000 miles per second. That's 930 times faster than the sound of your voice. Okay, so we're not going to stop thinking. What we're going to do is navigate the mind to think differently than we have before. That's all. And there's so many ways to do that. So many ways. And we can get into that so that it will help people. I tell you, just reading this book has helped. Just being in that energy has helped. Okay. Okay, so
I wanted to throw in a little side comment too. When you were talking about electricity as a metaphor for what you were describing, it reminded me that when electricity was first laid into people's homes back around the turn of the 20th century, one of the things that a lot of people believed in, it was kind of like a modern or an older version of what we would in modern day call a meme or a popular idea that goes viral that doesn't necessarily, like a fake news kind of thing that doesn't really have any weight to it, but it was a very popular thing at the time, was the idea that electricity gave off vapors. And if you were too close to these vapors, they could poison you, they could kill you. And people were literally terrified of the electricity. I mean, they dramatized it, in fact, in the television series, what was it called? Downton Abbey. Downton Abbey, Maggie Smith's character was afraid of the vapors, and the lighting was, of course, a lot brighter than what she was used to with the flame lighting that they used to have before. So she walks into the parlor and the lights are on, and she's holding her fan up because the light is blinding her eyes. So there were all these preconceptions that people had, but the key point is, like you said, the people who brought the electricity in, they had a very clear vision. Yes. And it was a true vision, and it was what it was really all about. And their vision won. Yeah. Their vision won out over this other vision that a large segment of the population had. It was there were, believe it or not, a lot of people believed in these vapors. They were turned off by all this brightness and so forth. But their vision didn't carry through. The vision of the people who said, we need this, we're going to bring this into everybody's houses, it's going to make everybody's life better, theirs was the vision that carried out. Again, we go back to this law of supply, it's called, supply and demand, right? When the supply is endless already, that's the key, right? We have enough of everything. People may not understand or realize that, but the supply is abundant in all ways. It's needing the demand for it that then brings it to fruition, okay? So that clear vision of the electricity, he had to do things, not just think about it. He had to do things and set it in motion to get it to that point where people would accept it. It wasn't just like he thought about it, figured it out, and says, hey, do whatever you want with it now. Right? You want to use it, use it. You don't? No. He could have, but he didn't. Right. So there's a force within inside of you that says, I got to take the steps. I got to bring this to fruition. And then you allow spirit to work, co-create with you to do that. But it's like that old verbiage, God helps those who helps themselves. So you co-create, not with just you, you co-create together, either as a consciousness, a collective consciousness, with God, with your partner, with, a group of people that you want to do healing with, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You collectively can do that. When enough people are streaming, let's call it streaming that same energy, you watch things change on a dime. Absolutely. On a dime. I want to add to that too, because in that part of the book, he does talk about, where there is a demand for something, yes, ideas will come in, like spirit, whoever the energies are, the ideas will drop in. Somebody, the light bulb goes off, and it'll go to a bunch of people, but because not everybody is going to jump on it. Exactly. I mean, my husband has had so many great ideas come to him, but never felt he was able to do anything about it. Next thing you know, it's out in the market, right? And everybody has things like that they've thought of, and then they see it later on.
But what I wanted to bring up is this thing with the thoughts, because they're constantly going, right? But meditation, like some people think you have to have no thought, and maybe that can be done, but I don't even look for that, because for me, when I can quiet those thoughts, it's almost like you can say, no, 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 no. Oh, there's a good one.
Yes.
Right? Or you open up that space where your guidance can drop in the answer. Like I'll get an answer to something when I'm meditating, and I'm not, I just let the thoughts go. Thoughts come, thoughts go. And sometimes you hear something really good. Sometimes you hear it as another voice, like your higher self giving you some guidance. And it's kind of what Rita will tap in to while she's doing all her. I mean, I tap into it too when I do my work, but in a little bit of a different way.
Just a different way, that's all.
Yeah. So it'll come in when you can, and we can all do that. Everybody has this ability. We're born with these psychic abilities, or this ability to tune in, because we're all connected anyway, right? And what we're moving into is we're going to be bringing more and more people are becoming psychic, because we're all starting to tune into more of being able to have that telepathic conversation.
Yeah.
I posted a video someone shared with me. I put it on my Facebook wall, and it's just these two little girls telepathically talking to each other. And it's really the story of the awakening. It's a short little clip. Yes, pretty cool. Walt, did you see that?
I did not see it. No.
Go to my page.
I'd love to see it. Yeah, that would be great.
I love also how what you're describing there is really about selection. Selecting what do you want, what do you prefer, what do you want to give your attention to.
Exactly.
And that's really, in my view, that is the optimum where meditation is concerned. Meditation is really about just getting control of your thoughts again.
Yeah.
Instead of having them out of control and like, oh my God, I don't know what's going on. I can't control any of them. Meditation is how you get the control back.
Yes,
and if people have a hard time meditating, because I know many people have a hard time, just as an example, I was doing Qigong this morning. So like 20 minutes, and it's just like exercises that you can do to, with your breathing and all that, to center yourself. It's like a meditation in motion, right? So the gentleman that I'm doing it to will say, focus on your tantien, which is where your belly is, right? And just breathe through it. And then I'm just kind of like looking out, not paying attention to anything. And then all of a sudden, it's kind of like when you're daydreaming, right? You just kind of go off. That's part of being in the space. Like people don't realize you're there. You're concentrating on that thing. You're breathing. You get into that space, and then all of a sudden, and thoughts come. Great thoughts come. So it could be something simple like that. Don't feel like you have to sit for an hour, and don't think for a second that you're going to have no thought, because you can keep pushing the thoughts away. They come, and then the mind will quiet. It will definitely quiet. But if you can't start there, or if you get annoyed because you can't get there fast enough, try it a little bit differently first to see if, this works for me. This will work for me.
Yeah. And that thought that I can't do it, it's just a thought. That idea that I can't do this, that's just another thought. Right. So it's like, no, okay. So maybe I'm not doing it now, but I'm getting there little by little.
Yeah. And that's the worst thing you could do is judge it. Right. When people are trying to do it and they're like, oh shit, I screwed that up again. That's the worst thing you could do, because that completely throws you out of, being aligned. So it's just like when the thought comes in, just go, see ya.
And maybe one way of looking at that, because it just popped in my head, is like, you wouldn't like yell at a 2-year-old because they did something wrong. You would help them and guide them through it. So talk to yourself, your inner child, like, okay,
that's right.
This is a little hard. It's not what we expected, but I know we can do it because other people, listen, if anybody else can do something, you can too.
Right.
It's just the way the universe works. If the ability or the thought or the thing comes into awareness anywhere, we're getting into the 2-minute mile, the thing, we talk about this every now and then, the 100th monkey thing. And that's why group meditations work, because we put that energy out. Like when you have a lot of people coming together, you can change things. I think Rita was talking about that, or referring to that a little bit earlier in some part of our talk, about how that energy can go out and change change for everybody else, not even just for yourself.
We wouldn't be at this point in our evolution if we didn't make those kind of changes. So somewhere along the line, someone came up with holistic medications, or and so mainstream medicine then said, oh, we need to take a look at this. It took a long time for people to understand what homeopathy was, or herbs, or and be able to trust that. And these are things that come from the earth, and these are also things that have been around far longer than medication. But because we're not used to it, and because we've been told, no, this is what we need to do, but once we all get on board, things, like I said, things change. It becomes a beautiful tapestry. Becomes a beautiful tapestry. That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, and that change is happening now.
Exactly.
Live stream for you guys from Nasha.
Go ahead.
She says, some dreams, some desires are so big that you tend to get stuck trying to figure out how. I believe that's where I personally get stuck. So please, could you elaborate on the how?
Okay, so how is really individualized, because I think everybody does that differently. So I can give you an example of myself. I knew I could manifest at the age 11. All right. So how many people, and maybe there are people out there, but for me at age 11, I was taken up with Farrah Fawcett, right? She was basically how I knew I was never going to be with a man. Okay. So I had her poster in my room. I was like, I am meeting this woman. I don't know how, but I'm going to do it. Within a year, I shit you not, this woman ends up at a restaurant in the village that only me, my family, and my father would go to, right? Wow. And she ends up there with her agent, and I end up meeting her. I still have her, her autograph, right? Okay. So at 11, you know what it was? I had this enthusiasm about it. I had this, I'm doing this about it, right? And I constantly put the energy into, I'm going to meet her. I'm going to meet her. I'm going to meet her. And I did it. Okay. So now how can you do that being now our age? Because back then at 11, I didn't have all the, maybe all the negative patterns that maybe came after a while. Right. So now it's like you do baby steps if you have to. You start out with a positive thought, take an action. Every day you put those positive thoughts in, maybe take another action towards it. Like ask her what is so incomprehensible, because there's nothing that, if she's saying to me, I'll never be able to make $1 million, I would tell her right now she's wrong.
Yeah.
So
I want to chime in before Rita was telling that story, I wrote down, my answer for Nasha would have been like to hold the essence of it. And so as you're holding the essence of that, just have faith in God, because you are God, you are a creator, God's the creator, that it'll fall into place. So here's Rita giving an example of how she had this energy and this enthusiasm about meeting Farrah Fawcett. She didn't know how it was going to happen. She never planned, I'm going to go to this restaurant this day because nothing. Right. It just came in. So that's what I love about access consciousness. If you just keep asking questions, putting out that energy, holding the focus of what you want, you will get it. But you must let go of the idea that you can't. Fuck that idea once and for all. Nasha, you claim your power. I'm talking to Nasha right now. You claim your power and you live it. Stop listening to all those voices who knows where in your life have told you it's impossible. They're wrong.
Right.
Feel what you know in your heart. Go with what you know in your heart. You don't have to know how it happens. It'll happen as long as you believe that you can and that you will, because you are a fucking creator. And I'm sorry, I'm cursing with that because I want her to get that. Because I know Nasha, I see her go back and forth with things on her posts and Facebook and all that. And it's funny because we talked about heavy energy before, and Nasha said she felt that from me. She gave me a private message. here I am giving you that power energy because I want you to cut it out, Nasha. You can create your life exactly how you want it. That's it. I give you permission. Rita and Walt give you permission to do it. Sometimes people just need permission. They need to know that they're worthy of it, and that just by being alive, they're worthy of it. Screw all those things people have tried to feed you in your life, and all that programming that's back there. You can go through lots and lots of sessions with people like me and Rita and clear it, or just make a decision. I'm done with it. And really believe it. And if that makes you feel like, wow, I could be done with it, and that makes you feel lighter, keep holding that energy.
Yeah.
I really like how you emphasized that you don't necessarily know how. In fact, most times we don't know how it's going to work out, how it's going to happen.
I got my own stuff going on. I don't know how things are going to happen. I'm just trusting.
And also, you know, you don't put a time limit on it. Like it has to happen, you know, within this. You don't know, but you just continually on a daily basis put that good energy into it. Hold on to that essence that you're talking about. Maybe take a step towards being able to listen. The man who, how many? We'll talk about Ford. You know, he came with the car, right? And we were, you know, driving a horse and buggy, and people were okay with a horse and buggy, and enough people had to have the consciousness to say, oh, we do need a car. We need to get around a little bit faster. We need this, we need that, right? So the demand for it had to get to because we already had the supply. And then he decided, well, I'm going to crank out this many cars a day. You know, how did he do it? It's like an architect. Same thing. How do you build the house? You start from the bottom, and piece by piece, you move up. Same thing. You have a little plan set, and you hold steady to that. And you because a lot of us, you know what it is, and this is so true of many of us. We want instantaneous gratification, but our mindset is not there yet. We can instantly manifest if we had that mindset. We have to get there, and we have to do the work to get there.
You know what that made me think of too, like especially for Nasha, for anyone, for all of us. What, you know, like, stop feeding the weeds. Stop feeding the weeds. Stop telling the old story. It's an old story. It's an old story, because right now, in this very moment, you have the power to choose a new story. So you don't like that one, that's an old story. Let's start feeding energy to the new story. And the way I like to do it too is, how do you feed things? You feed it with light, because light is that energy of the universe, right? So, I mean, I did a meditation that's on my YouTube. You can go and listen to it, where I implant a seed of light in your heart. And all you have to do every day is just call in the light, just call it in, and just keep feeding that light, sending that light out to others. If you do that every day, like I do that as often as I think about it, like even right now, I'm just doing it. I'm bringing in the light, and I'm sending it out to all of those.
I'm doing it too, as you're saying.
Yeah. So you feed the seed, you know, so I call it planting this. It came to me in a lot of healing sessions I do, where that'll come in, plant the seed. I'm like, okay, plant the seed. See the light. So we're going to feed light with light, which is the energy of everything. And that's how we create, by connecting to that pure love and light of, yes, I can. Everything is abundant. Life is beautiful. Right. Then you have this thing pop in, like, oh, that's not beautiful. Okay, well, let's send that light, that thing that's showing up in your existence that is not bright, right? Send it light. That's all we can do, is keep sending the light, Yeah.
When you gave your example of Henry Ford with the Model T and how he was building it out before there was any real demand for it, it kind of reminded me of a modern example, because Steve Jobs created the iPhone at a time when there were no smartphone. The smartphone, I mean, it was Jobs and Samsung. Apple and Samsung were the two that were developing this thing, and there was no market for it yet. It didn't exist. Right. I can promise you, the last thing that was in Steve Jobs' mind is, how are we going to get people to buy this? The how was not part of his equation at all. He just knew, he believed in his idea so strongly that it didn't even occur to him to wonder, how are people going to buy into this idea? They just were going to. That's all. He didn't know how. He just believed they were going to, and that's exactly what happened.
How fast all that technology happened, because we went from beepers, right, those little pagers, to like these big cell phones that were like humongous, that like You put it to your ear, you look like an alien. To these then smaller, streamlined. I mean, it's happening overnight, like, you know, because again, the supply is there, the demand came, here it is. You know,
it's funny about that, Rita, because I can picture those movies that we see where they're holding the big phone, and like we instantly crack up because we lived it. But yet people, the younger ones who are coming to this more developed planet, they're like, what the heck is that?
Yeah, they're Atari? What's Atari? Like that was the first gaming console, you know? I'm thinking, what do you mean? You never played Pong? What's wrong? What's happening here? It's like the best game ever. You know, but again, we weren't that generation where we were in a house all the time on a computer either. We had our, you know, we were out and we played in nature, and, you know, which was, to me, is very important. Even today, I really feel like we need to get back to that. Whether you're an adult or you're a child, you need to get back to that. So did that help her, Walt?
Yeah, she's putting out so much appreciation, Linda, especially. Thank you so much for you're right. I got tears. I've manifested a lot, and I have no clue how. I kept on telling people, and I was
doesn't matter.
And yes, I know I can. Thank you. And she also thanked Jeffrey, because Jeffrey was also giving her some advice in the live stream. So yeah, she's been getting
fabulous.
So I just want to say to Nasha, if I felt, because sometimes she's felt like overpowered by my energy, I want you to feel that right now, because I want you to totally get it that you have the power. Right? I just took my power and I gave it to you.
That's it.
Wow.
And sometimes
right here on the show.
Yep.
Yeah. Sometimes that's what we do to help people. You know, we have enough of our own energy that we can, because we know it's endless, right? We know we can fill ourselves up anytime we want, so we can give to others. I mean, that's what we do. So that's why when mothers especially come to me and say, I'm exhausted all the time, you know, I give my energy out to my kids, and then there's school, and then there's meetings, and I have a job. I said, well, when are you refilling your own energy? Like, you're always going to feel that way if you don't refill yourself. That's the bottom line. You need to take the time. And everybody in today's day, it's, I don't have the time. But if you don't have the time, it's never going to change. So you have to make the time. Now, after making, go ahead. No, I was going to say, after making the time, you notice that you have more time. I don't know how that works.
Oh yeah. I don't
know how it works, but I make the time to do it, and I'm like, oh, I got so much more done today, you know? And it's just the way it goes.
Which goes to prove how time is just a concept. Sure. And that we can have control over time.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. True. Go ahead, Walt. I'm sorry, honey.
No, that's all right. That's good. It's all good. When you were saying what you were saying, it kind of clicked in my head. Whenever I find myself thinking about something or facing something or talking about something, and I'm not liking where it's going, I like to remind myself to stop and just ask myself one question. What is it that I want instead?
Yes.
Because
I love that.
It's like, you would think that we do that naturally, but we really don't. We usually get stuck on, I don't want this thing that I've got. Right. We're
stuck on the negative.
What's the other thing that I want?
Right. You get stuck in the negative piece. And also, I want to bring up that what you're thinking also, for instance, an adjective that you're using, or something that maybe, like when someone says, I want something, well, you can be a want for the next 10 years.
You always want.
I always want something. So I tell people all the time, use the words, I am this. You have to use what's in present tense, like it's already happening. You can't use wishy-washy, words. I believe, I am. These are concrete. You're telling yourself, your higher self, the universe, I am, right? Just like God says, I am that I am. It's the most, important, how do I want to put it? Solid thing that you could say that brings things into manifestation. And, I know we have still the law of attraction. I don't know if we're going to have time to go through it.
Why don't we next week do law of attraction and law of receiving?
That would be great.
a few weeks to do, which is par for
Yeah.
the course here. We've done a lot of books, and I can't think of anyone that we were able to do in one episode. The shortest one was 3 episodes, and that was only half a book anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, it takes
I
time to do it.
love taking a book and dissecting it. And, maybe in the future we can pick a book and tell people about it, and then tell them that we're doing a show about it, and they can
Oh
read
yeah,
about it and come on. That might be a great way
absolutely.
to
We've done a
get
lot of
people
books like
involved.
that. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, if I had to count them up, we've probably done a couple dozen books that way, and it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Get people's input. It's nice.
It is. It's great, and you get a lot of different viewpoints on the same thing. It's really, a great deal of fun. Um,
Yeah.
Something I wanted to add into what you were talking about there, and it comes from our friend Cindy Chavez, who does the Wednesday podcast with me. Couple thoughts. Well, first of all, going back about 20 minutes ago to where we were talking about meditation, one of the things that she likes to talk about is how it doesn't really matter that your mind went off in a direction you didn't want it to, because the act of pulling it back to where you want to go is proper meditating.
That's right.
It's not doing it wrong, it's doing it right.
That's right.
And when she told me that the first time, I remember it was like it was a freeing experience. Like, oh, I don't have to worry about rules anymore.
Yeah.
There's not a wrong way to do this.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's
That
right.
is a very freeing thing. Just realizing I don't have to do it the way somebody else said to do it.
Mhm.
That's like my motto. There's no right way. Find your own way and keep it simple. That's what I get from my guides. No right
That's
way.
right.
Find your own way. Keep it simple.
That's why there's so many modalities, right?
Yeah.
Somebody may say, meditation is the best way I can do this. Someone else may say, no, I need hypnosis because that's the best way. That I find the easiest way to do it. Someone might say, I need past life regression. Yeah, there's a million ways, and whatever way it is, do it and love it. That's all. Just enjoy it.
And I would add to that, to any healers out there who, like, because I know a lot of modalities and I kind of mix and match them. Like, I don't do them by the book. I do them how spirit tells me to do them.
Right.
So, because I know sometimes people, if there are healers that are listening to this, or people that do the kind of work Rita and I do, they kind of get stuck on sometimes that they think they're doing it wrong. You're not doing it wrong. You learn what you can learn from all of the different modalities. And then you just open yourself and follow the guidance that comes. I don't know why I'm saying that. Maybe there's a reason why I need to say that. Somebody must have needed to hear it. But whatever Rita said sparked that one.
Yeah, I think that people, when they ask me what I do, that's probably the hardest thing for me to tell them, because I explain to them that I have it's like wearing a tool belt, and I have all these different modalities, and whatever you need that day, and whatever spirit tells me that you need that day, that's what you get, kind of thing. I don't call it Reiki, and I don't call it chakra balancing, and I don't call it, I don't do any of that, because it's not one thing anymore. You're right.
Yeah.
Actually, there's no real combination of words that's a wrong combination. And I got a great example of that yesterday. I did 2 shows yesterday, the normal show with Daniel Mangena, but a few hours earlier, I also did a show with a woman from Dublin, Ireland, named Abby Wynn. I had seen an article that she had written that was very much in alignment with my own thoughts and feelings about the placebo effect where coronavirus is concerned. So I wanted to have her on and have a conversation. And we did. It was great. It was wonderful. And in the course of having that conversation with her, she was expressing things in ways that I had never heard before, that I mean, they resonated. They certainly made sense to me. And I was thinking, how cool is this? I mean, I already have the experience of talking to you guys, and to Louie and Yona on Monday, and Daniel and Alex on Tuesday, and Cindy on Wednesday. I mean, I have all these great people I talk to, and here's another one. And once again, I'm getting a different perspective. All of these different perspectives, I think what they do is they make me feel reassured. They make me feel like I am on the right track. I do get this stuff. I am good at this stuff. And it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And it's an illustration of abundance.
It is.
Yep.
In a huge way.
Absolutely.
So,
I would love to read her article if you would send it. That would be great.
Yeah, sure. I'll forward that to you. Yeah, it was a great interview, by the way. And
awesome.
I also found out partway through she's actually a Hay House author. I didn't realize that. So
cool.
We actually had a Hay House author on here, which was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Really interesting person.
Awesome.
She's had quite a life. I made reference to her because of her title. I said that she had an unusual way of describing herself. She describes herself as a shamanic psychotherapist. Now,
Huh.
I don't know about you. I hadn't heard that combination before.
No, I haven't heard it either. I know someone who does the shamanism, and she does many other modalities with it, but never that. Yeah.
And I asked her about it. I said, why did you come up with that particular combination? And she said, well, sometimes when I'm talking to a client, I realize that I need to talk to them like a psychotherapist. And other times I know I have to talk to them like a shaman. So I figure, why not put them together?
There you go.
Well, I just want to point out that Rita's a Hay House author too.
Oh,
That's true.
well,
Your book is for the Hay House, right? Your first one.
not anymore.
Oh, not anymore. Okay.
That
Yeah,
changed.
I got all the rights back, and I'm going to be doing something else with it. But
Oh, okay.
yes, originally they were the ones who picked it up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Very
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Yeah,
Well, then
it's
I'm
all
looking
good.
forward to continuing our exploration of Mr. Raymond Holliwell's book from 1939. I'm still trying to
Goodness.
get over the fact that I have never heard of this book before, but it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward next week to find out, how does he define law of attraction? And don't give any clues away here. We got to get people.
Nothing. Nothing. Maybe some people will go buy it, and
Yeah.
they'll have some understanding. Yeah, that would be
Yeah.
nice, and then they could join us.
I
Yeah.
presume it's available on Amazon, right?
Yes.
Yes,
So there you go.
absolutely.
All right.
Yep.
So Rita, thank you first of all for coming up with the book for us to discuss. Thank your
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
bringing
Thank
that
you
to
for
your
participating,
and Linda, thanks
Of
for
course,
doing
my
all the
friend
research
Linda.
and giving us all the clues about the details of how the whole thing works. That's wonderful. So thank you so much
Yeah.
for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, live streamers, and thank you especially to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.